The mission. No one wanted. The stars above the Galactic Council chamber flickered on the great ceiling screen, showing a map of the outer rim. The voices of alien delegates filled the air, sharp, fearful, and unwilling. At the center of the map was a spreading storm, a collapsing starfield, devouring whole systems one by one, planets, stations, colonies, all being swallowed into silence. Every day, more lives were lost, more space was burned into nothing. The council leader, a tall insectoid from the Zarthek, spoke with trembling mandibles. The collapse is spreading. We must send a fleet. We must stop it before it reaches the inner systems. Silence followed. Every alien nation knew what it meant. The ones who had already tried had failed, their fleets lost in the storm, their names now carved into the wall of memory. No one wanted to join them. A scaled ambassador from the Draylen hissed, "We will not waste our ships. It is suicide." The furred voice of the Kalari joined. "Our fleets are for defense, not madness. Let some other fools die for this." One by one, the alien nations spoke. Every answer was the same. No. Fear echoed louder than duty. On the far side of the chamber, the human representative rose. Slowly, a man in a dark blue uniform, face calm but eyes burning. He had listened to hours of excuses, of fear, of cowardice. Now he spoke, and his voice carried through the great hall. "Humanity will take the mission," he said. "We will finish the job." The chamber erupted in chaos. Aliens shouted. Some laughed, others jeered. The insectoid leader clicked in disbelief. "You? Humans? Your fleet is small, your homeworld still young in the stars. How can you finish what greater empires refused?" The human did not flinch. He looked at them all one by one and answered, "Because when others turn away, humanity steps forward." That night, across the galaxy, news spread like fire. Humans take the mission no one wanted. Alien worlds, mocked. They called it arrogance, recklessness, madness. But in quiet places, in whispers, some admitted something else. Courage. Because while the great empires hid behind walls of fear, humanity was marching to face the storm. On Earth, the fleet was prepared. Not the largest fleet, not the most advanced, but forged from fire and need. Old warships were pulled from storage, repaired and fitted with new weapons, crews lined up, young and old, veterans and dreamers. No one was forced, all volunteered. They knew the risks, and yet they signed their names. To them it was simple. If no one else would fight, then humanity must. In the command center, Admiral Kieran stood before the gathered officers. He was a man with lines of war on his face, eyes hard like steel. "Listen well," he said, his voice deep and steady. "The galaxy has already given up. They believe this mission cannot be done. They call it suicide. They call it foolish. But they are wrong." He paused, his hand pressed against the star map glowing on the wall. "They do not understand what it means to be human. We do not give up when the odds are against us. We do not run when the dark is near. We fight, and we finish what must be finished." The officers stood in silence, then saluted, some with tears in their eyes, some with fire in their hearts. The room shook with their voices. "We'll finish the job." Across the council worlds, alien leaders watched this human resolve with unease. Many believed the humans would die quickly, some even hoped for it. But deep inside, a question grew that none dared to speak. What if they succeed? The day came when the fleet launched, dozens of ships rising from Earth's orbit, their hulls shining against the black of space. Families watched from cities, holding hands, some weeping, some proud. Children waved flags, old veterans saluted. The ships roared into the void, carrying not just soldiers but the weight of an entire species. At the head of the fleet was the flagship Resolute. Its engines burned bright, cutting through the stars like a blade. Inside the council chamber, the alien delegates watched the human fleet disappear into the collapsing starfield. Some whispered bets on how many hours they would last. Others shook their heads, calling it waste. But the human seat sat empty, the flag of Earth still standing, tall beside it. A reminder that when all others said no, humanity had said yes. The mission had begun. The galaxy waited for news. None expected the humans to return, but the humans were not like the others. They were death worlders, born in struggle, raised in fire. And for them, the impossible was simply another word for unfinished. The void swallowed their ships, and the first tremors of the storm struck. Engines screamed, shields flared. The humans braced themselves. Behind them, the galaxy mocked. Ahead of them, the storm waited. And in the silence of the void, humanity whispered the same words again and again. We will finish the job. The laughing council, the council chamber buzzed with restless voices. The human fleet had already left Earth, pushing into the collapsing starfield. Yet here the great empires still sat, arguing, mocking, and waiting for the humans to fail. Delegates filled the wide hall, their eyes glowing under the light of the floating star map. The storm was growing. Worse, whole systems swallowed. But the council was not planning rescue or war. They were planning excuses. A delegate from the scaled Draylen leaned back in his chair, tail swaying with lazy arrogance. They will not last a cycle. Humans are too fragile. They will break before the storm does, he hissed. The Kalari, a feline-like race with silver fur, laughed sharply. They think courage is enough. Courage does not shield a ship from collapsing suns. Courage does not stop ancient machines. Others joined, their voices filled with amusement. The chamber was full of laughter, the sound bouncing against the tall metal walls like an echo of disdain. But not all were laughing. In the corner sat an old tavern scholar, his 4 eyes watching in silence. He had studied humanity longer than most. He knew their history, their stubbornness. When the others mocked, he whispered to himself, "You do not know what you are laughing at." The insectoid leader of the council raised a claw, silencing the chamber. "We will not waste more fleets. The humans wish to sacrifice themselves. Let them when they are gone. The council will return to discussion." Agreement rippled across the chamber. It was easier to let others bleed, easier to watch from safe distance. Meanwhile, deep inside the void, the human fleet moved forward. The storm tore at their shields. Radiation burned against their hulls. Every hour was a fight, every moment a test of will. But the crews held firm. They had been trained to endure, raised on a death world where survival was earned each day. This storm was brutal, but it was not worse than Earth's own history. On the flagship Resolute, Admiral Kieran stood with his officers, watching sensor screens fill with chaos. "Report," he demanded, his voice steady. "Shields holding. Engines. Strained but stable, Admiral," came the reply. The crew did not hide their fear, but neither did they let it rule them. In their silence was determination. In their eyes was fire. Back in the council chamber, the laughter continued. Reports arrived of human ships entering deeper into the void. Instead of failing, they advanced. The Draylen ambassador laughed again. They marched to their deaths blind and foolish. But a whisper moved across the hall. "They are still moving forward." The tavern scholar finally spoke, his voice rough but clear. "Do you not see? Every empire here refused. Every one of... You called it impossible, yet they go where none of you dared. Tell me, when they succeed, how will history judge us?" The chamber fell silent for a breath. Then laughter rose again, louder, sharper. "They will not succeed," the insectoid leader snapped. But the silence in the scholar's eyes remained like a warning. On Earth, families gathered around broadcast screens. The council networks did not show the human fleet with respect. They showed it as entertainment. Alien commentators mocked, calling the humans reckless dreamers. But the people of Earth did not care. They stood proud. They whispered the same words that echoed from the soldiers' lips. "We'll finish the job." In hidden corners of alien space, not all were mocking. Common citizens, miners, traders, refugees, people who had no fleets of their own, watched in awe. For them, the humans were not fools. They were hope. If someone was willing to face the storm, maybe the galaxy was not doomed after all. Back in the void, the human fleet discovered the first wreck. An alien cruiser, torn apart, its hull drifting like a grave marker. Silent bodies floated inside shattered compartments. The crew of the Resolute watched in grim silence. This was proof of what had come before. Empires greater than Earth had tried and failed, but instead of turning back, Admiral Kieran gave the order, mark their sacrifice, then push forward. The fleet advanced again, deeper into the chaos. The council chamber received the report days later. Humans had passed through where others had fallen. The laughter did not stop, but unease grew behind. The eyes of many. If the humans kept moving, if they survived what had killed the rest, then their mockery would turn to shame. Still, the council chose denial. They will not return, the leader declared. But in the shadows, whispers spread. What if they do? Admiral Kieran stood at the front of the Resolute's bridge, his gaze fixed on the growing storm. His officers waited for his word. He spoke quietly, but every voice on the bridge heard him. Let the galaxy laugh. Let them call us fools. When we return, we will return with victory. The crew saluted, their voices rising in a single promise. We'll finish the job. Into the void. The human fleet pressed deeper into the collapsing starfield. Around them, light twisted like broken glass. Radiation waves screamed across space, and gravity itself bent like a wild beast. For most species, this place was death. But for the humans, it was only another challenge. Engines burned hot, shields crackled, yet the ships moved in formation, cutting through the chaos with iron will. On the bridge of the flagship Resolute, Admiral Kieran watched the storm with calm eyes. Every screen showed madness. Planets shattering. In the distance, stars folding in on themselves, void currents tearing at reality. His officers shifted nervously, but he spoke with a steady voice. Stay the course. No turning back. If we stop here, everything we've done is wasted. The crew nodded, their fear drowned by his certainty. Hours turned into days. Ships shook under pressure. Hulls groaned, but the fleet did not break. Each time a wave of destruction hit, the humans adapted. One ship shifted power to engines, another rerouted shields. Another sacrificed a section of hull to keep moving. Where alien fleets had tried to endure with rigid tactics, the humans bent like water, surviving through improvisation. This was the human way. Never perfect, never clean, but always pushing forward. Then came the wrecks, one by one. Broken alien ships drifted out of the storm, floating like ghost bones. A Tuvani dreadnought, its mighty cannons ripped away. A Kalari carrier split down the center. Its hangars burned empty. Dozens of smaller ships twisted metal, their crews long gone into silence. The fleet slowed as these graves filled the screens. The silence inside the Resolute's bridge was heavy. Here was proof that even the galaxy's greatest powers had tried and failed. But instead of retreat, Admiral Kieran raised his hand. Mark their places, honor them, but remember, our path is forward. The fleet moved on, leaving behind trails of light through the darkness. Each wreck reminded the humans what was at stake. If they failed, Earth itself would one day lie broken the same way. That thought pushed them harder. Failure was not an option. As they advanced, the storm changed. Sensors picked up strange signals. Not random, not natural, but patterned. Commander Elira, the science officer, frowned at her console. These readings are not just stellar collapse. Something is inside this storm. Something is watching us. The words chilled the crew, but Admiral Kieran only narrowed his eyes. Good. Then we are not walking into emptiness. Something lies at the heart, and we will find it. Back in the Galactic Council, reports of the human advance caused new waves of disbelief. Delegates shook their heads. They cannot be alive. This is impossible. But each new message confirmed the same truth. The humans had crossed deeper than any before them. Still, the council mocked. They walk into their own grave, one delegate spat. But beneath the laughter, unease was spreading like cracks through stone. In the void, the fleet grew weary. Crew members slept in shifts, waking to alarms, eating meals of cold rations, never knowing if the next hour would be their last. And yet morale held, songs were sung in the mess halls, stories told of Earth's oceans, mountains, and cities. They spoke of home not as something lost, but as something waiting. Every soldier, every pilot, every officer carried the same thought. We will return, and when we do, we will carry victory with us. On the 5th day inside the storm, the Resolute picked up a massive shadow. It moved against the current of collapsing stars. At first, the crew thought it was a drifting wreck, another dead ship lost long ago. But then lights flickered across its hull, cold, unnatural lights. The object shifted, turning as if in response to their approach. "It's not wreckage," Commander Elira whispered. "It's awake." The crew held their breath as the giant shape unfolded. It was no alien ship of the Council, not a design from any known empire. This was older, darker, built of black metal with sharp edges that glowed faintly against the storm. A machine, massive and silent, drifting like a predator waiting in the dark. Admiral Kieran's eyes narrowed. "So this is what destroyed the others," he said quietly. The storm itself was dangerous, but it was not the true enemy. The true enemy had just revealed itself. The fleet tightened formation, weapons charged, shields flared. The humans were ready. The void was no longer just chaos, it was a battlefield, and humanity had always known how to fight. As the shadowed machine stirred, the storm around it seemed to roar louder. Stars shattered like glass. Radiation howled, but the human fleet did not turn back. They pressed forward, straight into the jaws of the void, because that was their promise. Every alien nation had said no, but humanity had said yes, and now in the darkest part of the galaxy they would prove why. The enemy awakens. The shadow in the storm unfolded like a nightmare. Metal wings stretched wide, longer than the Resolute itself, glowing with faint blue, lines that pulsed like veins, eyes, or something like eyes lit across its hull, cold and sharp, watching the human fleet. The storm bent around the machine as if even the void obeyed it. On the Resolute's bridge, silence filled the air. No one breathed, no one spoke. Then the machine moved, slow at first, then with sudden speed. Its engines flared with a pale light that was older than any technology humans had ever seen. "It's alive," Commander Elira whispered, her voice tight with fear. Admiral Kieran did not look away. "It's waiting for us," he said, his voice steady. "Then we'll give it what it's waiting for." The machine unleashed its first strike. A blast of energy ripped across space, tearing through the void like lightning made of fire. One human frigate, the Vigilant, caught the edge of the blast, its shields flaring, then collapsing. Metal screamed, alarms roared, and the ship spun out of formation. "Evasive maneuvers," shouted the helm officer. The fleet scattered, but not in panic, their movement sharp, drilled, human. Where other fleets had broken in fear, humanity held its ground. Admiral Kieran's voice rang across the comms. "All ships, weapons hot, focus fire, do not let it choose the battlefield." Cannons flared, torpedoes roared, and beams of plasma slashed across the storm. The machine turned, its black hull absorbing hits, glowing brighter where weapons struck. Then it answered. Dozens of smaller shapes detached from its body, drones fast and sharp, each armed with blades of light. They swarmed like a cloud of knives, diving into the human formation. The Resolute shook as drones struck its shields. "Port shields failing," cried an officer. "Reroute power. Keep us alive." Admiral Kieran ordered. The humans fought back. Point defense cannons roared, shredding drones into sparks. But for every one destroyed, 2 more appeared. The fleet was drowning in enemies. Yet still they fought. In the council chamber, alien, delegates watched the battle reports with wide eyes. "This is the end," one whispered. "No fleet has survived the awakening machines," another muttered. But the Tavaran scholar leaned forward, his voice low and certain. "Do not speak. Too soon these are not like the others." Back in the void, the battle raged. The Vigilant, still burning, turned its broken hull toward the enemy. Its captain, face bloodied but steady, gave his last order. "Ram it." The ship surged forward, engines flaring. tearing through drones, and slammed into the machine's wing. A flash of fire lit the storm, half the wing torn away. The captain's sacrifice gave the humans a chance. Cheers erupted across the fleet, voices rising. For the vigilant. Keep firing! The machine screamed, not with sound but with energy. Waves of force rippled across the storm, shattering asteroids, bending light. Ships rattled, some shields cracked, but the humans held formation. They were battered, bleeding, yet unbroken. This was not a fleet built for retreat. It was built for survival, for stubborn defiance. And defiance was the one thing the galaxy never understood about humans. Admiral Kieran saw the moment. Focus all fire on its core. He shouted, pointing to the glowing heart inside the machine's chest. The fleet obeyed, every cannon, every missile, every beam turning as one. The void lit up with human fury. For the first time, the machine faltered. Its glowing lines flickered. Its drones paused. It was wounded, but the victory was not free. A destroyer, the Horizon, caught a counterblast full on its hull. It vanished in light, leaving only silence. The fleet grieved in the moment, but the Admiral's voice cut through. Remember them later, finish the fight now. The storm itself seemed to roar with the battle. Radiation waves clashed with human shields. Debris from shattered stars tore across the field. Yet the fleet pushed deeper, following the wounded machine. It retreated toward the core of the collapsing region, not fleeing but luring them. The Admiral saw it and understood. This is only the beginning, he muttered. They are not guarding the storm. They are part of it. The words chilled the crew. If this was only one machine, how many more waited in the dark? How many had already destroyed fleets before? But humanity did not stop. Their promise was iron. Every alien nation had said no, but humanity had said yes, and now, with fire and blood, they were proving what that yes meant. The machine turned again, glowing brighter, preparing a strike greater than any before. The humans braced, their shields weakened, their ships scarred, yet their hearts unbroken. Admiral Kieran's voice carried through every channel, every ear, every soul. Hold the line. This is humanity's fight. This is the job we finish. And as the storm roared and the machine awakened in full, the human fleet answered as one. We'll finish the job. The human way. The storm had no mercy. Every second tore at the human fleet. Every moment threatened to break them apart. But humans did not wait for mercy. They made their own way. This was the human way. The great machine loomed ahead, its black. Wings still cracked from the vigilant sacrifice, yet it did not fall, it adapted, repairing itself with swarms of drones that poured like liquid metal across its surface. Each drone rebuilt what was lost, each wound closed as if the machine itself was alive. The crew of the Resolute watched in grim silence. It heals itself, Commander Elira whispered. Admiral Kieran's voice was calm but sharp. Then we hit harder and faster than it can heal. The fleet broke into smaller groups, not retreating, but adapting. Frigates circled wide, firing in tight patterns, distracting the drones. Destroyers darted in close, their cannons hammering at weak points. Carriers launched waves of fighters, each pilot diving into the storm with reckless courage. Humans fought, as they always had. Not with perfection, but with improvisation. Not with elegance, but with stubborn grit. They turned broken ships into weapons, scraps into traps, chaos into strategy. One cruiser, the Falcon's Cry, took heavy damage. Half its engines burned out, its shields torn. Instead of falling back, the captain turned it into a spear. He ordered the crew to reroute power to weapons only. The ship burned bright, firing until its hull split apart, taking a swarm of drones with it. The crew did not run, they chose to fight until their last breath. And in that moment, every other human ship fought harder, because sacrifice was not defeat, it was fuel. In the Galactic Council chamber, reports flashed across screens. Delegates stared in disbelief. They fight like they want to die, one alien muttered. No, said the old Tavaran scholar, his 4 eyes gleaming. They fight like they refuse to lose. The machine struck again, unleashing a storm of energy. Ships shook, Alarms screamed, but humans adapted. They shifted power from failing systems. They used debris as shields. They flew straight into danger when the only way out was through. Where alien fleets had broken in fear, humanity turned fear into fire. Every problem became a challenge. Every wound became a reason to fight harder. Admiral Kieran stood tall at the heart of the Resolute's bridge. He watched as his fleet bled yet still advanced. He knew the cost, but he also knew the truth. "This is the human way," he said softly. "We do not wait for safety. We do not beg for mercy. We take what cannot be taken. We finish what cannot be finished." On Earth, billions watched the transmissions that slipped past the storm. Families saw their sons and daughters risking everything. Children asked their parents, "Why?" And the parents answered with pride, "Because no one else would, because someone has to." Around the galaxy, ordinary people, miners, refugees, outcasts, saw the same. For the first time, they did not see humans as weak newcomers. They saw them as something more, a species that refused to surrender when surrender was the only choice others knew. The machine, wounded but not defeated, shifted tactics. It stopped chasing, stopped striking at random. It studied the humans, learning their patterns. Its drones began copying human maneuvers, fighting back with their own versions of human tricks. It was adapting, and still, the humans did not stop. A squadron of fighters, low on fuel, made one final run. Their leader, a young pilot with a cracked helmet, spoke with steady breath. "Follow me. One last strike." They dove into the machine's glowing vents, weapons blazing. They knew they would not return. Their explosions tore through the machine's inner systems. Its body shook, its glow dimmed, and in that fire, humanity carved another mark. On the Resolute, Admiral Kieran clenched his fist. "They think endurance is enough, they think strength is enough, but they do not understand us." He turned to his officers, his voice like iron. "Tell the galaxy, this is how humans fight. We improvise, we adapt, we never stop. Even when we are broken." The officers repeated his words, sending them across the fleet and across every human ship. Voices rose, strong and unshaken. "This is the human way." The storm raged louder. The machine screamed. But the humans kept pressing forward. Every sacrifice bought another chance. Every broken ship became a weapon. Every death carried meaning. Where others saw failure, humanity built victory piece by piece. This was their power, not size, not numbers, not ancient technology, but the will to fight when all others had already given up. And so, as the void grew darker and the machine gathered its final strength, the humans gathered theirs too. They knew the next battle would decide everything: survival, victory, or extinction. But no matter what came, the galaxy had already seen the truth. Every alien nation had said no, but humanity had said yes. And they had shown the galaxy why. The last stand. The storm's heart pulsed like a dying sun. Gravity bent in wild waves. Light shattered into broken shards. Space itself twisted like it wanted to tear apart everything inside. And in the center waited the great machine. Half its wings gone. Its body cracked and glowing, yet still alive. Still ready to kill. The human fleet was battered. Dozens of ships, already gone, names whispered like prayers across the comms. Those who remained carried scars, hulls scorched, engines failing, shields burned thin as paper, but they were still moving, still pressing forward. The galaxy had said the mission was impossible, yet here humanity stood at the edge of victory or death. On the Resolute's bridge, Admiral Kieran studied the enemy with steady eyes. The machine had adapted to every tactic, every trick, every sacrifice. It learned like a predator, faster than thought. If humanity gave it more time, it would grow stronger than ever. So there could be no more waiting, no retreat, no delay. This was the moment. "This ends here," Kieran said, his voice cold as steel. "We strike with everything we have, one last stand." The officers saluted, no hesitation in their eyes. They knew what it meant. Not survival, but sacrifice. Not victory for themselves, but for the galaxy. And still they answered with the same words: We'll finish the job. The fleet tightened into a spearhead. Every ship shifting formation, engines flaring, weapons glowing. The Resolute at the front leading the charge. The machine stirred, its drones pouring out like a black ocean. Energy lit its core brighter than a star. It was preparing its final strike. If it fired, the fleet would be erased in an instant. Forward! Kieran roared. The fleet surged. Cannons thundered. Missiles cut through the storm. Fighters screamed into the swarm. Explosions lit the void like firestorms. Drones shattered by the thousands. But still they came. Endless, merciless, human ships fell one after another, swallowed in light. Yet the formation held. The humans did not turn. One destroyer, the Iron Lance, broke from the formation. Its captain's voice rang across the comms, calm but final. Good hunting, Admiral. Give them hell. The ship ignited its engines and rammed straight into the machine's chest. The explosion tore through its armor, ripping open a glowing wound. The machine screamed in silence, its core flickering. The fleet cheered, voices breaking. For the Iron Lance, press forward. But the machine struck back. A wave of energy tore across the spearhead. 2 cruisers vanished in fire, their names gone in a blink. The Resolute shook. Alarms howled. Hull plates split. Shields gone, an officer shouted. Kieran gripped the railing, eyes fixed on the burning core of the enemy. One more push, he said. We don't stop now. The remaining ships poured everything into the breach. Every cannon, every missile, every drop of fuel turned into fire. The storm itself seemed to tremble with their fury. The machine staggered, its drones faltering, but it was not enough, not yet. Its core still burned, brighter, wilder, preparing to unleash one final blast. Admiral Kieran knew what had to be done. He turned to his crew, his voice low but clear. The Resolute will finish it. Silence filled the bridge. Then one by one his officers nodded. None argued, none begged. They had always known this moment would come. Set course straight for the core, Kieran ordered. The helm officer's hands trembled, but he obeyed. The Resolute's engines roared, burning brighter than they ever had. The ship surged forward, leaving behind the fleet. Every comm lit up, voices shouting, "Admiral, no!" But Kieran's answer was steady. This is the last stand, and humanity always stands to the end. The Resolute tore through the drone swarm, its guns blazing until nothing was left, its hull cracked, its decks burning. Still it flew. The machine turned, its core glowing like the heart of a star. The 2 titans raced toward each other, light and fire colliding in the storm. Kieran stood tall at the center of the bridge. He looked at the faces of his officers, at the screens showing Earth far away, and with his final breath he whispered, "We'll finish the job." The Resolute slammed into the machine's core. For a heartbeat there was silence. Then light exploded, tearing through the void brighter than suns. The storm shuddered, the machine screamed, and then silence again. The core collapsed, the storm broke apart, the void stilled. The enemy was gone. What remained of the human fleet drifted in shock. They had won, but at a cost no words could measure. Ships burned, names lost, heroes gone. But the mission was complete, the impossible had been done. And across the galaxy, whispers began to spread. The Council had said no. Every empire had turned away, but humanity had stood, had fought, had finished, and the galaxy would never forget it. The galaxy remembers silence filled the council chamber. For days, no reports had come, no signals, only darkness. Every alien nation waited, whispering, hoping the storm had consumed the humans as it had consumed all others. Many were certain. The fleet was gone, lost to fire and shadows. But none dared speak it aloud because deep inside, they feared what it would mean if humanity had survived. Then the signal came. Weak, broken, carried by battered transmitters. A single voice, rough but clear, echoed across the council hall. "This is humanity," it said. "The job is finished." The chamber froze. Delegates stared in disbelief, some dropping their datapads, others whispering in panic. "It cannot be," one hissed. "No fleet could survive that storm." Another argued, Yet the proof flickered on the screens. Images of human ships, scarred, cracked, half-destroyed, but alive, drifting out of the broken storm. At their head was not the Resolute, for it was gone. But smaller ships carried its flag, flying high, carrying its memory. The Council had mocked them. The Council had laughed, but now no one spoke. The silence was louder than any jeer. Across the galaxy, the news spread like fire. On mining colonies, workers stopped their drills to listen. On refugee worlds, families gathered around broken radios, their eyes wide. On forgotten outposts, soldiers raised their heads with pride. Everywhere, ordinary people whispered the same words. They did it. The humans finished the job. On Earth, bells rang. Cities erupted in tears and cheers. Families embraced. Children waved flags. Veterans saluted the sky. Not all had returned, but enough had. And the sacrifice of those who stayed behind would never be forgotten in the ER. Ruins of the storm, the human fleet gathered. Their ships bore scars, their crews carried wounds, but their eyes shone with something the galaxy could not understand. Victory. They had faced what no empire dared. They had destroyed what no empire could. And they had proven that humanity's word was not empty. When they said we will finish the job, they meant it. The Council reconvened. Voices that had once laughed now shook with unease. Some demanded explanations, some demanded silence. But the Tavaran scholar rose, his four eyes sharp, his voice cutting through the noise. "Remember this day," he said. "You all said no. You all hid behind fear, but the humans said yes, and they carried the weight of the galaxy on their shoulders, while you mocked them. No one argued. No one dared. Because the truth was burning too bright. Humanity was no longer the young race, the newcomers, the Deathworlders to be dismissed. They were the ones who had finished the impossible. And from that day forward, no one laughed at Earth again. The survivors of the fleet returned home to a world that welcomed them as heroes. But they did not claim glory. They spoke of those who had fallen, of the Vigilant, the Falcon's Cry, the Iron Lance, the Resolute. Names etched into memory, names carried forever, because victory was built not on survival, but on sacrifice. And humanity understood that better than anyone. Admiral Kieran's name was carved into stone across Earth. His final words repeated in schools, in parades, in whispers. "We'll finish the job." They became more than a promise. They became a creed. Not just for humans, but for all who believed the impossible could still be done. Generations later, when new storms rose, when new machines stirred, the galaxy remembered. They remembered the day humanity stood when all others fled. They remembered the battered fleet that emerged from fire and silence. And they remembered the words that carried across the stars. Every alien nation said no, but humanity said yes, and humanity finished the job.